Hello,
Is
hello.
everyone good to start?
Hello.
Okay, so welcome to Hebron's AY. Let's get informed, where we'll be discussing relations between the communities and police and asking those who are part of both communities questions and etc. So we'll give everyone a moment to ask questions and see what would be the best ways to interact with cops and what are our rights and how to collaborate with the NYPD. So first, we want to get to know the panelists and who will be speaking today. And first, I'll introduce Rita Pierre. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Rita Pierre is a licensed New York City attorney. She is currently employed at Associate Labor Council and Human Resources Director of Highgate. Rita formerly served as an Associate General Counsel at SEIU Local 32BJ, where she represented members of the labor union. Prior to entering the world of labor, Rita served as an Assistant Director Attorney at the Kings County District Attorney's Office, where she specialized in prosecuting domestic violence and elder abuse cases before moving to general crimes. Outside of her 9 to 5, Rita is involved in her community. Rita performs community service projects as well as presents workshops, seminars, forums, and legal clinics to members of the community on permanent issues. Rita is the immediate past president of the Haitian American Lawyers Associations of New York and served as a member of the board of directors. In 2017, Rita became the founder and CEO of Free DA Women NYC, a fashion brand that helps professional women express their style and flair with the jewelry, accessories, and builds their skills and confidence through workshops, seminars, and her weekly podcast, Free DA's World. Rita is also the host of According to RP, a radio show that currently addresses issues facing the Black community. Rita graduated from St. John's University with a Bachelor's of Arts in Government and Politics, with a minor concentration in Africana Studies. Rita received her Juris Doctorate degree in 2011 from Fordham University of Law. Upon graduating law school, Rita attained her master's degree in bioethics from Columbia University. So Rita is one of our speakers today. And next, I'll be introducing Carl Pierre. And he is a graduate from New York Law School, class of 2019. He got his bachelor's degree from St. John's University in May 2011. He is currently working at the Attorney Consult with New York City Transit. He previously worked with the New York City Law Department with both of the torts and family law departments. And for the other panelists, if you can introduce yourselves, we can start with Errol. Can we unmute you?
Yes. Okay. My name is Zaro Sherifan. Work for the New York City Police Department. I'm also a member of SILEF organization. I currently work in Transit District 4. I'm not here to represent the NYPD, but I'm just here to represent myself as a Seventh-day Adventist Christian as well as a police officer, and how to express of certain concerns that someone may have.
Okay, thank you for introducing yourself. Next, can we have Daniel Edmond?
Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel Edmond. Currently employed for the New York City Police Department for 3.5 years. I'm here to speak on the issues. How can we help the community and policing together? I got a bachelor's in business administration. I also attend Hebron SDA.
Okay, thank you. Next, We would like to have Mario, Uncle Mario Michael, introduce himself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mario Michelle. I started with the police department in 2002. I've worked in various precincts throughout Brooklyn, including the 7-1 precinct, Crown Heights, 73rd precincts, Brownsville, 6-3 precincts, Bergen Beach. Been all over the place pretty much. 2011, got promoted to sergeant, been a sergeant since. I earned a degree in psychology, Bachelor of Science, City College of New York. I also have two minors in mathematics and computer science. Like everybody mentioned, we're not here to represent the NYPD, but we are here to represent SILEF, and we're here to be part of the dialogue and give our brothers and sisters a few tips. Probably you guys heard of them before, but it's okay if you hear it 3 or 4 times, or maybe somebody on right now watching never heard it. So I'll be here. I know we got Errol. We have a lot of guys there with a lot of experience. I'll let them talk. If I have to get in, then I will. Thanks for having me.
Okay, thank you for joining us. So, guess we'll begin with our first question. Let's see. The
I'm
first
sorry.
question
Do we have Gary Toles also on in the panel today?
no, we do not have him on the panel today.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Okay.
It's okay. Okay, so the first question we would like to ask today is, what advice can you give our youth and young adults that are fearful and distrustful of law enforcement? So if we can have Errol answer the question.
All right, so I understand how some of our youth may have fear in coming in contact with an officer despite of the recent events. I encourage that they would be reminded that not every officer is the same officer. Not every officer is a bad officer. While being in contact with the police officer for whatever incident that might have had occurred, or if they had committed a violation they might not know of, I suggest that they stay calm. Yes, you can ask why you're being stopped. At the time of being stopped, if you feel like you're being wrongfully accused or you haven't done anything wrong, I advise that the person stay calm and cool. Just take a mental note. If you're not able to write down anything, you could take a mental note of the person's shield and you can make a complaint later. Now, if you know you have done something wrong, whether it's a traffic violation or a moving violation or acting disorderly or even jumping the turnstile, take note that yes, you can be stopped committing any type of violation that's in the penal law code. At that time, when interacting with a police officer, just remain calm. Follow instructions as far as ID. Yes, you must give ID when officer does ask for it. But my suggestion is to stay calm, take mental note of every interaction. And if you feel like it's wrong, you could observe the person's shield. Every officer has a shield. And when you take a mental note of it, if you have a complaint, you can make a complaint.
Okay, thank you for answering. Would any of the other panelists like to chime in or make a comment on this question?
My name is Mario Michelle again. What I could add to what El just mentioned, very important. One thing we have to remember, the officers are people, regular people just like you guys. So There's no reason why you should be fear or be afraid of the officer because he's in uniform, right? So look at me right now. I'm home I'm in my studio. I'm chilling, right? Could see my keyboards. I'm wearing t-shirt. I got the hat on. We're regular people, all right? The uniform usually scare people away. It shouldn't be that way. And I understand the problem is because of what, as blacks, as youth, as young people, what we've experienced in the past, and also what we've seen happening in, you know, watching social media. And I understand it. Me myself, when I get off work, going home, I get pulled over too. And it does, the treatment is not different until they realize, oh, he's a cop too. So I do understand that how you guys feel, and yes, it does exist. Some of the officers are very rude. Some of them are yes, very arrogant and whatnot. My advice would be what I do. I stay calm, like Errol mentioned. I do not volunteer information that I don't have to. If it's a car stop, officer, you need my license and registration. Here it is. End of story. All right. I know you guys probably have other questions. I don't want to go away from the actual question that was asked. If I understand clearly, as why should we tell the youth who are afraid of the police? You know, police are there to protect you. You have to build a relationship with them. If you live in the area, you see a police officer, go greet him. Say hi, officer. How you doing? How's your day today? My name is so and so. I reside at such and such address. If you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to knock on my door. We always, we always have water. You need to use the bathroom. You have to invite the officers into your space, pretty much. They come from everywhere. They come from Long Island, out of state, upstate New York, Orange County, Putnam, everywhere. So make him feel at home. Your community is it's like your home, okay? And those officers are guests to your home. You dictate how you want them to treat you. If the officers that knows you by your name, they know you're not a threat to them. They're gonna be friendly to you. So that's for your community. I mean, driving out of state to a different area where nobody knows you, just like other people mentioned, just stay calm. All right, don't argue. Make him feel comfortable. Okay, and then your fight is not right when he stops you, but your fight is in court. You'll have your chance.
Thank you. The next question is kind of a roll off of the previous question. You kind of answered it, but we can go a little more.
Rita wanted to say something.
Sorry, I was on mute.
Okay.
I didn't even realize it. I was just going to just make a quick commentary with respect to, I guess, what we should tell young people who are afraid of the police. I think that we would be naive if we didn't really, I guess, take into consideration why they have such high fear just by saying, just be nice to the police, be calm, be whatever. I think we're kind of not understanding how a lot of these youth really are processing the information. I think it's important that we do have honest conversations by explaining to them, again, what the role of a police officer is and that there are good and that there are bad. I think that's very important. And I think on a higher level, I know that's a later question when we get into community policing, which I think is where Brother Mario was lending into. I think that's another conversation. We'll get into that a little later, so I don't want to get into that now. But I do think that it's important that we do acknowledge that there is a serious fear, and it's justifiable for most. And I think that one way when we're talking about how do we address young people who are fearful of the police is that we do have to talk about racism. We do have to talk about injustices. We do have to talk about some of the history so that they could understand where a lot of this is coming from, as opposed to just telling them, because not everybody is going to accept the message that Brother Mario is saying. Like, I understand it, I'm an adult, I can process that, there are certain ways that we have to act, we have to comport ourselves in order, to get certain responses. I totally agree with Errol that when we're talking about police encounters, being calm and being compliant is the safest way to keep yourself alive, because again, we don't always know who these police officers are. A lot of them are good, a lot of them are bad. But I think that is important for us when we're talking to young, to really expose them to the real realities, both the good and the bad, and not just try to feed them, what we think might be the solution, but to really take into consideration what they're going through when they're saying that they're afraid of the police.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. That kind of goes into our next question. Well, completely goes into the next question. So the next question is, how can we assess our police interactions in an era of highly publicized incidents of police brutality? So anyone can just step in and
repeat the question.
Okay. How can we assess our police interactions in an era of highly publicized incidents of police brutality?
All right.
Go ahead.
I think that when it comes to our interactions in this day and age, we should, especially for our young adults, our youth, we should have the conversation with them and explain to them that everything that they do see on social media, all the other interactions that they see, is not always going to be their interactions. Not all interactions with the police are going to be the same. But with that in mind, we just have to be mindful, because social media is kind of priming us to have this fear of interacting with the police. And so with that, we should just know that whatever is happening in other places, it is happening. We don't have to disregard it, but it doesn't have to be that that's going to be our situation. So we shouldn't go into that interaction with the police officer expecting, you know what, I'm going to get choked out. I'm going to be the one that's, put in the back of the van and get beat up. But, it can be just different. Like Errol said previously, that, if you remain calm in the situation, you are compliant, and, you're not forcing the officer's hand per se, and you pretty much do everything by the book, I want to say, and it can lead more, it tends to lead more to a safer situation, and also just being vigilant and aware of the police officer, because a lot of times you can tell off of somebody's body language, like, you know what, the guy kind of seems like he's a little agitated coming into this right now. So if I go up now this is going to change. So instead of it being a regular simple stop, and this officer is asking me for this ID, and I'm like, why do you want my ID? Now he's already up. Now it's bringing him even further, and it can escalate. So we don't want to just keep it on us as ourselves as individuals, but we just want to make sure that the onus that we do our part, and we're just like, you know what, I'm not going to let you take it to that part. But the officers also too, they have to know that when they're policing in certain areas, that when you're dealing with people that have this distrust as of this day and age, that officers can't come in with that that fear that they may have, or that high intensity when they're trying to make these stops.
I agree with what Carl said. I think the onus has to be on both, because, just like, when a police officer could approach an individual, they also don't know if that individual has mental instabilities, has mental health, could be autistic. So it has to be really on both. I mean, we have people who are on 10 for whatever reason. You stop me, I could have been doing something, but the fact that you stopped me, they want to go on 10 and they want to get all aggressive and they want to get extra. But then you also have officers who are also walking around agitated. So I think that when it comes to the assessment, I feel like, for somebody who doesn't have, mental instabilities, autism, somebody who is I guess I don't want to say normal because that's not politically correct, but somebody who can ascertain and can determine situations, I don't think it's ever the solution to turn up with anyone of authority, only because you just don't, what does it serve for you to be extra? I mean, am I annoyed that you're asking me for my ID and not these other, people that are around me? I could be annoyed, but me, just complying, like, what does that do, right? What harm is that for me to just comply in that moment? So I think that everybody just has to kind of look at what the situation is and what it warrants for, because time and time again, what we are seeing individuals who are, quote unquote, either resisting or just being non-compliant. And it takes the situation, further than it needs to be. There are times where even if that person was going to get arrested maybe anyways, but that extraness that they were displaying, only made things worse. And so situations got escalated. I feel like whenever I tell people, when they, when I'm either on these panels or asked, what should we do? How should we assess? The goal should be to get home safely, or to get to a place safely. Like you want to go home safely, right? Like that should be the goal. So if I'm asked for my ID, I don't want to give it, that might be my desire or whatever the case is, but I have to think like, what's going to get me home quicker? If I give the ID, they look at the ID and then they give it back to me, I'm on my way, right? As opposed to now ending up in a situation where I'm arrested because other things went down. So I think that people just have to be a little, people have to really take themselves out of the situation at times. It's hard to do so, but like the goal in mind has to be, I need to get out of this. I need to get home.
I'm gonna chime in for like 2 seconds. To elaborate on everybody, I heard everybody's response and everything. It is true that that we need to, Rita was correct in terms of assessing the situation, because honestly, you guys dictate, people dictate how the interaction is going to happen. And one thing, to go back on the first question, I think we need to let youths or people that, civilians and everything, I think they should know their rights first. A lot of people don't know the rights or the law or anything. I don't think they know anything. They just think, that police officers just stop them just to stop them. You understand? If you know your rights, I think everything should be calm from then. And after we calm and everything, I think that the interaction between you and the police officer should be smooth right after that. But I think that we need to like let kids know or use, because there's all on the internet. Everything's on the internet. If you see, everything's on the internet, and you can read your rights on the internet. All the laws that have been passed are on the internet, on Instagram now, social media. I'm pretty sure, I think if kids nowadays read like what is going on, what laws that they just passed, and what are your rights in terms of a car stop, or they're stopping you on the street, I think everything will go smooth from there.
I would like to comment on that briefly though, but because I think that some people would, I mean, I agree in that everybody does need to know their rights in general. I feel like it's important that, our kids, when we're explaining these things to them, that we ourselves know the rights that that we're trying to teach them. But I think that we've seen time and time again, people who do know their rights and they're spitting the rights out. Like they're telling the officers like this, I know my right for this and for that. And they're still being accosted. So, it's really hard sometimes, when we're explaining, like we have to be very delicate when we're explaining these things to the kids, because, they'll come back, like Jediah would come back and tell me, I see what you're saying, Mom, I need to know my rights, but so-and-so knew his rights too. And look what happened. He told the police officer his rights and he still got, knocked down or still got taken into custody for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. I think, with knowing the rights, I think a lot of times, what happens is that, yes, some people don't know their rights, which is why they're saying, oh, you can't, you can't ask me for my ID, which is not correct. You can, be asked for an ID. But I think even when it comes down to the police officers too, and law enforcement, a lot of them do not know the law that they're out here in these streets for. And that lack of understanding on both parts, I think, is where we get a lot of these issues, because you have somebody who is telling the officer their rights and the laws, and the officer is just like disregarding it, because a lot of times they don't even know what that person's, they can't even say anything to rebut because they actually don't know the rules and they don't know the laws that they're charged to uphold in the community. So I think the education has to kind of go, we have to acknowledge both parts when it comes to it. Not all officers, obviously, but I've encountered a lot that were charging things and they didn't even know what they were charging. They didn't even know what the elements of the crime that they brought the person in for. And that's a big, big problem if we're asking, you know, if we're looking for some sort of like middle ground where there's, you know, where we can diffuse these situations.
So Mario, if I may interject, that's very important what Sister Pierre just mentioned. And also Brother Carl earlier also mentioned something very important. That is why I mentioned earlier, the fight is not on the street. I'm sure there is somebody that knows about the law. So if the officer's wrong, just wait for your time when you go to court. And that person who knows about the law is going to say, hey, officer, you was wrong. You was totally wrong. You've arrested this person for actually no reason. Guess what? Case dismissed. Okay, I spent a night in jail. I know it's inconvenient, but then what do? I sue, make money. That officer get reprimanded, and then there goes where the training goes. So there's ongoing training for officers. But this forum, actually, I don't think the focus is on whether or not the officers know what they're doing. And I don't believe that's what Sister Rita mentioned. I just happened to say it. I think our focus is really how our youth can avoid being choked out, being beaten. Yes, you know you're right, that's fine. But it's very simple. Compliance right now, that's what our main focus is. Your right is violated. Yes, they do violate people's right every day. But if you're not alive to fight it afterwards, it's useless. I know there's protests, but you're not alive. I'm going home alive. That's my goal as a civilian. So also one thing I have to mention is on a daily basis, the NYPD itself, I could tell you, and this information is available to everybody via a FOIA request. We answered over 10,000 jobs on a daily basis. So we encounter over 10,000 people in one precinct only on a daily basis. So one incident out of, let's say 10 incident out of 10,000 encounter is very low when you're dealing with human. And we have to add the human factor into it. I understand that one time could be
too much.
It's too much because somebody's dead. I understand that. But it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. And yes, training is on both parts. My officers, I'm a supervisor. After work call, I train my officers. I remind them of the training that they received. This is remember what you should and should not do. And when they go out there, does that mean they're gonna remember everything, follow up on everything they've learned? No, it's gonna be a human factor where they're going to forget. But what I do realize is the common denominator of resistance, quote unquote. We're not going to talk about resistance because I'm going to say resistance for the conversation. We don't want to go into detail what that means, but the common denominator that I see, me personally, in my experience, is when somebody's fighting the cop on the street, chances are you still going to get arrested. And the chances are, or you may not get arrested. I stopped over when I used to work as a regular police officer. I used to stop cars a lot in Brooklyn. So that was my assignment. I do car stops, cell phone, seatbelt. I tell you, man, I could never write somebody who was nice to me. I can't do it. You stop the person for, officer, I'm sorry, you stopped me. Can I help you? Yes, ma'am, I stopped you because you have a brake light. Oh, I'm sorry. I can get that fixed. As opposed to the person that you stop, hey, you got nothing better to do? Why are you stopping me? You already on the edge. And at that point, if I have a violation on you, I'm not gonna use my discretion on you, period. So I think the youth, whoever's listening right now, you know your right, that's fine. We'll tell you about your right. After you get stabbed, you think your right was violated, you can call Sister Pierre. She's an attorney. Brother Carl, he's an attorney, my understanding. You also could reach out to a SILEF. We'll let you know if that officer did something wrong or not. And we'll tell you how to go about reporting it, but not on the street. Also, one more thing before I leave. What you guys see on social media, usually you only see half of what happened, because there are professional agitators. What they do, they work in teams of maybe 2 or 3. And this is real. I'm not making this up. They'll send somebody to attack the officers, to start with them. And somebody has already recorded. They're not going to show you when they first launch out the officers. And all they're going to start recording is when the officers start reacting. All right. So these are staged incidents, a lot of them. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them are staged. So don't believe 100% what you see on social media. It's like cops out there killing people, or if you're out there, you're gonna get killed. Your people are like, should I stay home? No. Comply. Let them do what they gotta do, and then go to court and fight it.
Okay. Thank you for responding, everyone. The next question we have is, why are there so many minority youths in the criminal system? And I just want to keep a reminder, if everyone can keep their responses to a limited time, please. But yeah, so if anyone would like to interject and join in on that question.
I mean, they're getting arrested. They're getting arrested for a lot of times, petty crimes. A lot of that, now they've reformed they're still reforming the bail system, but you have a lot of people who are incarcerated that couldn't get out on $1 bail. There are many reasons. The systemic racism in our community, in our society, is what, perpetrates a lot of this stuff. It's a very loaded question. I think it'd be very broad. People can take it to, the fact that there's absence of fathers in the home, that there's absence of, role models in the streets, and that, kids are out here unsupervised a lot of times, not by the choice of their parents, because their parents have to go to work. And so, they engage in a quote unquote life of crime. So there are many different factors for that. But I think a lot of them are wrong place, wrong time. There's so many factors, I think, as to why, but I think that the main thing is that we live in a society where, prison, like each bed, prisons are big business in the United States. You have to have people in prisons in order for there to be a profit, right? And so if that's the case, who is the easiest to put in those beds? It's the minority community, right? Based on some of the way that charges are being brought against people, the way that people are being policed in certain communities, the way that when somebody is charged, the type of representation that they get. There's a lot of that goes into why Black and brown people are targeted and are incarcerated, and why when they're incarcerated they can't get out.
Thank you for your answer. We're going to move to the next question, and it's for parents. For those of you who are parents, what should they say to their school-aged children, those from ages 10 to 12 and older adolescents that are 14 and above, about how to interact with police, considering all the children that have been murdered due to police brutality? How do you educate them in how to interact and how to respond to these officers?
I would say is that how can the parents teach them is by explaining them the law, teaching them the law and the rights. Like my brother Daniel said, everything is on internet, everything. knowing what the cops could do, knowing what's the rights when they stop. What they used to have was stop, question, and frisk. And when you teach them how to interact with officers, once you explain the situation at that time, every situation will be different. Not every situation will be the same. So to be different, also to teach the youth and teach their children not to be dressing like everybody else. One of the things is that when someone commits a crime and the victim calls 911, what happens is the victim gives the 911 operator detailed description. Sometimes it may be detailed, sometimes it's vague. Sometimes it may be male black, male white, white shirt, blue jeans. If you're wearing, and sometimes the person might say the exact same sneakers. The minute the person say the exact same sneakers what the person is having on, let's say the Nike Air Max 95. The minute an officer hears it, let's say they see two persons with the same race, same color that it came over and wearing the same t-shirt and the same jeans and the same color of the jeans and the same sneakers, they're going to stop both of them for that crime and have to check and have to do something what is called a show-up. The TV would go who was the one that did it and had to point them out. So in order to teach their kids, what I'm saying is you must teach your kids to not be following other kids, not follow the trend. But not only that, when you're being stopped, to comply, but also to teach their kids the law. Also, if the parents knows the laws as well, they'll be able to teach each law to the kids as well.
I'm gonna just comment real quickly because I actually have a 13-year-old who's going to high school next year, and so we had this conversation. We've been having this conversation for a while. I think very briefly, I agree with what Brother Errol says. You do have to educate your kids on what's going on in with the laws and with the regulations. But we're talking about kids; they're not really gonna absorb all of this type of information. We're talking about school age kids. I think that depending on what age group your children are, you can start talking to them since they're in elementary school. There are a lot of books out there that can help, bring the message with respect to understanding racism, understanding discrimination on their level. But I think more importantly, if we're talking about, middle school and high school age kids, because they're the ones that seem to be more so encountered by the police, whether they're coming home from school or whatever the case is. I mean, I talk to my son every day when he goes out. He knows to be calm. I do tell him when he's approached by the police officers that he needs to be calm because I know my son's temperament. He's kind of like me. You can't just talk to me however you want to. That's how my son is too. And so I recognize that with him being a kid who is getting bigger in stature and in height, that he has to understand that he's not seen as a 13-year-old kid. Like he's not seen as an 8th grader going to high school. He might be perceived from like a white officer or even a black officer that he is, quote unquote a man, and that he needs to, if he's being approached by the police officer, that he needs to, one, be calm, don't turn up, don't get sassy, even if your friends are around, you want to impress them or whatever, just be calm. And then 2, I let him know that he is not to speak to them. If they ask you for his name, he can give his name and that's it. Do not answer the questions of the police officer. Ask for your mother. Tell them that you would like to speak with a parent. You don't feel comfortable, you want to speak with your parent. If the kid has a lawyer, because some kids, some families are like that, ask for the lawyer, but don't answer any questions because these are kids. Kids, they can say you don't know what they're going to say. I mean, adults shouldn't even answer, to be honest, but we're talking about kids. We don't want them to feel uncomfortable. So what I tell my son is, tell them that, you do not feel comfortable, ask for your parent. And I also tell them that your mother's a lawyer if they want to try anything funny. So I let them know that they just need, that these kids, they need to be armed with the truth, yes, but they need to be calm, they need to be respectful, they need to be compliant when he is, like, if he ever is addressed by a police officer in the streets.
All right, thank you, Rita, for your
One thing.
I'm sorry, if I may. Oh.
So also from 17 and down, they are now considered as a juvenile. So they must require an adult to be there to question them. And as to what Rita was saying, I suggest it should be only your parent. It could be anybody, an adult, but as a parent, you trust your parent. If you could trust your parent, someone that's 18 and above, fine, but your parent should be, if they ask you any type of questions, no, I would like to have a lawyer and I would like to have my parent, because they cannot question you in regards of anything if your parent is not present at that time.
I mean, can I say something here? Let's be like real. I mean, let me be real. Like, what does the officer's gonna ask a kid really?
I
For
mean,
example, the kid is not being arrested. So all that lawyer, all asking for a lawyer, I think that's too much.
no.
For example, how does officers encounter kids from school? It's either pass truancy hours or dismissal. Okay, cops knows they dealing with kids. They're not just gonna start asking accusatory question like, "Oh, did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do that?" They probably gonna say, "Hey, why are you out here at school? You're supposed to be in school 7 in the morning. It's 10 o'clock. Why are you here? Well, it's 4 o'clock. I mean, it's 4:30. Why are you not? Why are you hanging out here?" I don't think that question is specifically suggesting this kid is gonna get arrested. And then, what? No, I can't answer that. Let me call my mom. And another thing is, I understand that, Sister Rita mentioned, tell them, hey, my mom is a lawyer.
Okay, guys. We'll be moving on to the next
Hey, don't
question.
mess with me. I'm a
lawyer. Well, you're gonna
Yes,
get.
they need to know that, because some of you officers do not. I mean, I understand you, Brother Mario. You might say that you do not ask these questions. We have whole documentaries on police officers asking children random ass questions. Next thing you know, they're in jail for 30 years. This happens all the time. Police officers do this all the time. I don't say all officers do this, but you're making it seem like this stuff doesn't happen and that we're being extra. We are
No,
not being extra. We want our
I'm
kids
making
to
it
be
seem
safe.
like it doesn't happen too often, and at
Yeah,
that
but
level.
that's not true.
At
That's
that
not true,
level, the level
unfortunately.
you're talking about is when they're arrested, and the
No, even
department
before.
Even
has a policy about interrogating a juvenile,
They don't
and
follow the policies. That's why we're asking to
well,
defund
that's
the
why
police.
those cases get thrown out. They don't go to jail, because if you questioning a juvenile and his parents are not present, that's, first of all, you can't do it. You just can't. We can't do it.
I understand what the policy says, but that's the problem. A lot of officers do not follow protocol, and a lot of things get covered up. Let's not act like that doesn't happen. So what we're doing here is we're making sure that we address all of the situations.
Right.
We make sure that we speak very candidly. As a parent of a child who wants to make sure that my kid is not roughed up in these streets, I have to be very clear that there is good and that there's bad. But what you're making it sound like, this is extra. Yes, my son better tell them his mother's a lawyer, so that it's not a threat. It's to remind you that if you try to get any information out of me after I told you that I'm a minor, that there's going to be problems, because a lot of officers don't respect children like that.
At the same time, I want to make sure that people knows officers are trained. Then they know they're not to question juveniles.
They're supposed to be trained, but not everybody follows their training. That's the problem.
Right, you're
guys,
right about that.
Excuse me. I want to thank you all for, answering the question. This is a very touchy topic, but we need to move on. So the next question is it within my rights to record the interaction with the officer? Is it within your rights to record a traffic stop?
100%.
It is, and you have to also know now with body cam, every officers are also required to record any car stops they do. So both parties, it's good for you to record it. That's fine. It's good.
So there's a lot of instances where officers, their body cams or their cameras are shut off. Are there any repercussions or anything of that manner? Because it seems that there's a lot of moments where
that's a very good question. I'm glad you asked it. And they are working on laws right now or regulation that it will be a criminal offense if an officer did not record an incident that was a required record incident. What I mean by that is some of the encounter does not have to be recorded, but some are. You have to. For example, you're making an arrest, you do a car stop, you do a stop, question, and frisk. those interactions, a domestic incident, those are must record. So if an officer did not record one of those must record incident, he could be charged with OGA, governmental administration. All right, an officer could go to jail for that. This is new. This is as a result to Mr. Floyd's death. There's a lot of changes being made at this time.
Okay, thank you for answering. The next question
Sorry,
is
if I could
what?
just,
Sure.
sorry. It is a very utopian and very idealistic idea of thinking that, with these new regulations that will come into place, that, officers' body camera is shut off, then they will face these repercussions. But in reality, we know that there are a lot of times where the cameras do get shut off, and it's blatant, and it's been told to superiors and to those in charge that yes, this officer blatantly turned off his camera or interfered with the recording, and yet nothing still has happened to that officer. Cases get pushed to the side, and it goes through the long process of trial, or even not even getting to trial just yet. But a lot that has come up today is that about waiting for your day in court and being able to defend yourself in court. A lot of times, there are people that don't even get to make it to court. So what needs to be addressed initially is even before incidents get into place, like just having officers proper mindset before we get to interacting with the community members, proper mindset with when you're out there and interacting with police officers. Because if I'm having a bad day and I bump into someone, it doesn't matter if I'm recording, if the officer's recording, you know what? It's just going to be that it's going to turn sour however it goes. So with just thinking about saying that, if we do record, then it's going to work out, it's going to work. It really isn't, because again, technology is faulty. There's nothing that's perfect. So a camera can turn off by the officer's doing, or just by the camera just shorting out on its own.
Thank you. So the next question is it legal to get arrested for resisting arrest when the officer failed to explain or tell you why you are getting arrested? So can you be arrested without a call, without being notified what you're being arrested for?
At the time of arrest, or we're talking about in general?
At the time of the arrest, if an officer approaches you and tells you're under arrest without notifying you what you're being arrested for, is that legal? And is it resisting arrest? Is it legal to get arrested for resisting arrest if you're not informed of what you're being arrested for?
I understand the question. That's an attorney question. I was going to wait for Sister Piero.
Yeah, I was trying to understand the question exactly. Like, is it resisting arrest that's the issue, or
so what she's asking is, Sister Pierre, if you know you did nothing wrong and then you resist, is that okay? That's what she's asking.
If basically if you're being approached by an officer and they tell you randomly you're under arrest and arresting you, are you questioning the officer or not fully complying, like asking them, why am I being arrested, and being a little restrictive? Is that legal? Is that illegal?
So I'm going to answer on a law enforcement point of view, and I get attorney Carl and Sister Pierre can answer from their point of view.
If we can keep everything short, please.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, if an officer say you're under arrest, that's it. It's over. He doesn't have to explain to you why. Okay? But he will have to let you know what the charges are and why you're being arrested, because an arrest doesn't mean anything. It's just a detention for the time being. That's why we have a district attorney. They're the one that actually telling the officer you have something or not, you have charges or not. So at the time, if the officer say you're under arrest, if you flare your arms, you refuse to put your hands behind your back, yes, you are resisting an arrest that he's trying to make. New York state law says even if you know the officer's wrong, unless they change this law, even if you know the officer is wrong about his arrest, you should not resist. If you say you're under arrest, you're under arrest. Plain and simple.
Okay.
Well, an officer has to tell you why they're arresting you, either when they're doing it or soon after as practically possible. That's the law. In terms of resisting arrest, I mean, if resisting arrest is the only charge, and there's no other real basis, that has to be investigated by the district attorney's office. So when we're writing up the cases and we see that the officer brings all these charges, we investigate it. Sometimes we'll decline the prosecution right then and there, depending on what we see. Meaning, like, if you're just resisting arrest and we're looking at it and we're like, what the hell is this? We'll decline the prosecution right then and there. Usually there has to be something else involved with the resisting arrest for it not to be suspicious. If all you're being arrested for is resisting arrest, and that's that, there's usually, like, our eyebrows must be raised. We have to ask what is going on here. What else is going on here? There usually is something else coupled with it. It can't just be resisting arrest.
Right.
Thank you guys for joining us today. Just a final question is, are there any books or videos that you would like to share or notify the viewers of how to better understand their rights, how to better interact with police, or anything like that?
I mean, a couple of books that I've read, I think, that are really helpful when it comes to, like, race relations. The Color of Law is a very important book. I just had it here. I think it was White Faces, Black Mask, something like that. I forgot who wrote it. I have it here. It's a really good book. I mean, I've read, the autobiography of Malcolm X. I've read an autobiography of Asada. I think it's helpful. Some people might find it to be militaristic, but at the end of the day, we are Black people living in this country. We need to understand how things go down. And so it's important for us to read those types of books. And there's a lot of documentaries with, the 13th that's on Netflix, When They See Us. I think I would recommend when we're dealing with kids. I had Jediah sit, and my son is Jediah. I had him sit with me and watch all of the episodes, and I basically explained everything that was going on. That was one of my talk lessons with him, was based on us watching this movie. But there are a plethora of books out there, I think, that are very, very helpful. I think books that are talking about our history as Black people in this country are important. History of the police state in this country are very important. And then books on community building are really, really important. I can send some to the chat, and maybe you guys can post it on Instagram or Facebook. But
okay, well, thank you all for joining us today. Unfortunately, that is time. So we would like to end this meeting, this AY, with the closing prayer. So if you all can bow your heads and close your eyes for a moment, prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for allowing us to have this moment to communicate with one another. We thank you for your grace and your love. We thank you for allowing us to see another day. We ask that you change the hearts of those in this world. We ask that you keep us and guide us and teach us love and to be more compassionate with one another. In your heavenly name, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Bye, everyone.